The courtroom fell into a tense silence as the young attorney, Marcus Caldwell, slammed his leather briefcase onto the polished oak table, his eyes locked arrogantly on the elderly woman seated before him. Evelyn Carter sat composed yet visibly worn by years of struggle, her Evelyn, hands folded quietly in her lap. Beside her, her granddaughter, Naomi, freshly minted, attorney and full of determination, watched with a mix of pride and restrained frustration. Marcus's voice cut sharply through the chamber, dripping with condescension as he addressed Evelyn with thinly veiled disdain. "With all due respect, ma'am, I don't believe someone of your background truly understands the intricacies of Patterson v. Greenfield," he sneered, waving legal documents carelessly in her direction. He leaned in, punctuating his words by jabbing a finger at the papers as if to intimidate. When Evelyn opened her mouth to respond, Marcus brusquely interrupted her, dismissing her as if she were an irrelevant obstacle. His actions drew gasps from the spectators. His arrogance was palpable. Naomi clenched her fists, half rising from her seat, but the bailiff's watchful presence kept her grounded. Marcus continued his theatrical assault, circling Evelyn like a predator, stalking its prey, patronizingly, explaining complex legal precedents, as if she were incapable of grasping them. Yet beneath his bravado, he failed to realize that Evelyn Carter was no ordinary litigant. Behind her calm demeanor lay decades of legal wisdom and a secret strength that would soon dismantle his hubris piece by piece. Evelyn Carter was more than just an elderly woman standing up for her community. She was a formidable force shaped by a lifetime of dedication to justice. Once a respected justice on the state Supreme Court, Evelyn's name was synonymous with integrity and legal expertise. Over 4 decades, she had navigated the complexities of the law with unmatched skill, authoring landmark opinions that shaped property rights and historic preservation across the state. Though she had retired years ago, stepping away from the bench to focus on giving back to the neighborhood she loved, her sharp mind and deep understanding of the law remained as keen as ever. Her presence in the courtroom was quiet, but commanding. She carried herself with a grace that spoke of resilience and wisdom earned through years of breaking barriers. Evelyn wasn't just fighting a case, she was carrying the breaking weight of history, ensuring that her community's legacy would not be erased in the name of progress. Beside her stood Naomi Carter, Evelyn's granddaughter and legal partner in this pivotal battle. At just 29, Naomi was already making waves in the legal world as a passionate advocate for civil rights and community preservation. Though younger and less experienced than many opponents, her determination burned brightly, fueled by the lessons and values instilled by her grandmother. Naomi had taken on the challenge of representing the West Side Community Center, a historic landmark that had served as a vital hub for Black-owned businesses and cultural activism since the 1952nd. This center was more than a building, it was a symbol of resilience and unity for generations of marginalized residents. Understanding this deeply personal connection, Naomi approached the case with a fierce commitment to protect not only a physical space, but also the history and spirit it embodied. Together, Evelyn and Naomi formed a unique team bridging generations of legal wisdom and fresh, fearless energy. Their partnership was more than familial, it was a shared mission to safeguard a community's heritage against the relentless push of development interests. As they prepared to face the powerful Meridian development firm, their bond and complementary strengths promised to challenge the assumptions of everyone who underestimated them. Evelyn's storied past and Naomi's rising passion made them a formidable duo, determined to ensure that justice would honor both law and legacy. The legal battle unfolding in the heart of the city centered on a contentious dispute between Meridian Development, a powerful real estate conglomerate, and the West Side Community Center, a historic landmark cherished by generations of local residents. Meridian had ambitious plans to transform the site, a sprawling plot of land housing the community center and adjacent properties, into a modern commercial development promising economic growth, job creation, and urban revitalization. Citing zoning laws, building codes, and municipal regulations, Meridian's legal team argued that their project complied fully with current planning statutes and that the outdated community center no longer qualified for special protection under the law. Their position was clear. Progress demanded pragmatic decisions that would benefit the city's broader population, even if it meant the demolition of buildings tied to sentimental and cultural values. However, standing in stark opposition were Evelyn Carter and her granddaughter Naomi, the plaintiffs determined to preserve the community center's legacy. To them, the case was far more than a typical zoning dispute. It was a fight to protect a living symbol of Black heritage and resilience. The West Side Community Center had served as a vibrant hub for Black entrepreneurship since the 1952nd, offering office space to small businesses, hosting civil rights meetings, and nurturing cultural pride in a neighborhood often marginalized by city planners and developers. Its walls bore witness to decades of activism, community solidarity, and economic empowerment. For Evelyn and Naomi, the center's destruction would erase not just a physical structure, but also the memory and ongoing support system that countless families relied upon. Adding complexity to the case were troubling allegations against Meridian's acquisition practices. Evidence suggested a pattern of discriminatory behavior. Meridian had been systematically purchasing properties owned by Black residents and business owners at prices far below market value, often using a network of shell companies to obscure their involvement. In contrast, similar properties in predominantly white neighborhoods fetched premium prices. This disparity raised serious questions about the fairness and equity of Meridian's development strategy, hinting at a broader issue of racial bias embedded within real estate transactions and urban redevelopment policies. Evelyn and Naomi's legal team framed their argument not only on preserving a landmark, but also on confronting this insidious discrimination that threatened to displace vulnerable communities under the guise of economic progress. The courtroom became the battleground where these opposing visions collided. Meridian's emphasis on economic opportunity and legal compliance versus the plaintiff's call for cultural preservation and social justice. Meridian's lawyers leaned heavily on technical interpretations of zoning ordinances, building safety codes, and property rights, dismissing the historical and cultural claims as secondary concerns. They argued that the community center failed to meet certain architectural criteria, and that the costs of renovation and compliance would unduly burden taxpayers. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Naomi presented meticulously gathered documentation, expert testimony, and historical accounts to demonstrate the center's irreplaceable value and the discriminatory nature of Meridian's practices. At stake was not just a plot of land, but the future of an entire community's identity and cohesion. The case embodied a broader struggle seen across many cities. How to balance the march of development with the need to honor and protect marginalized histories. For Evelyn and Naomi, winning meant preserving a sanctuary of culture and ensuring that progress would not come at the expense of justice. The courtroom atmosphere grew increasingly charged as Marcus Caldwell, the aggressive attorney representing Meridian Development, launched into a barrage of legal citations and dense jargon. With practiced precision, he quoted precedent after precedent, aiming to overwhelm and intimidate the plaintiffs. His favorite weapon was the landmark case of Patterson v. Greenfield, a ruling he wielded like a sword to slice through the community center's claims. Caldwell's tone was deliberately condescending, his words layered with complex legalese designed to confuse not only Evelyn Carter, but also the jurors and even his own opposition. He portrayed the West Side Community Center as an outdated relic, unworthy of special protection, insisting that economic development must prevail over sentimental attachments or cultural claims. But Evelyn was no ordinary opponent. Calm and composed, she listened patiently as Caldwell attempted to bend the law to his will. Then, with the quiet confidence earned from decades on the state Supreme Court, Evelyn rose to dismantle his arguments piece by piece. She was not just familiar with Patterson v. Greenfield. She had authored its majority opinion years earlier, shaping the very precedent Caldwell leaned on so heavily. With surgical precision, she identified the nuances Caldwell had deliberately glossed over or misrepresented. Evelyn pointed out that the ruling had specific exceptions for cases where thorough community impact assessments were completed prior to development applications, an essential detail Caldwell had omitted. She clarified how subsequent rulings had refined the application of the law, exposing his selective and inaccurate interpretations. As Evelyn methodically refuted each point, the courtroom's mood shifted. Caldwell's confident smirk began to falter. His carefully rehearsed speeches gave way to frustration as he struggled to keep pace with her legal expertise. The tension escalated when Caldwell, in a moment of sharp impatience, resorted to a personal slight questioning Evelyn's memory and insinuating that her age impaired her grasp of the law. The courtroom gasped at the blatant disrespect. Judge Harriet Morris, presiding with firm authority, immediately intervened. She issued a stern reprimand, reminding Caldwell that personal attacks had no place in the U.S. courtroom and warning him to maintain professionalism. Olivia Carter, watching closely from her seat, felt a surge of anger but also admiration for her grandmother's poise. Inspired by Evelyn's example, she rose to present her own statement. Though younger and less experienced, Olivia articulated the community's perspective with passion and clarity. She highlighted the historical significance of the community center, its role as a sanctuary for Black entrepreneurship and civil rights advocacy, and the troubling pattern of discriminatory property acquisitions by Meridian. Despite Caldwell's repeated objections and attempts to derail her testimony, Olivia remained composed, grounding her arguments in fact and principle. Together, Evelyn and Olivia formed a formidable legal team. Their interplay of seasoned wisdom and youthful determination not only countered Caldwell's legal maneuvering but also began to unravel the fate of corporate invincibility. As Caldwell's aggressive tactics waned, under their sharp scrutiny, it became clear that this case was more than a fight over property. It was a profound contest over justice, respect, and the recognition of a community's enduring legacy. As the trial progressed, Olivia Carter took the stand with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to expose the deeper injustices lurking behind Meridian Development's polished facade. With meticulous preparation, she presented compelling evidence revealing a disturbing pattern of systemic discrimination embedded in Meridian's property acquisition strategy. Using detailed charts, transaction records, and expert testimony, Olivia demonstrated how Meridian had orchestrated a network of shell companies to covertly purchase properties in historically Black neighborhoods at prices significantly below market value. This tactic allowed them to bypass community scrutiny and undercut local property owners who were often pressured into quick sales under unfavorable terms. In stark contrast, Olivia highlighted Meridian's markedly different approach in predominantly white neighborhoods. There, the company paid premium prices for similar properties, reflecting a clear disparity that could not be explained by market conditions alone. This discrepancy raised serious concerns that Meridian's acquisition strategy was driven not by neutral economic considerations, but by racial bias and discriminatory intent. Olivia argued that this approach effectively marginalized Black homeowners and businesses, stripping them of their wealth and community ties, while fueling gentrification and displacement. Further deepening the case, Olivia connected these acquisition practices to Meridian's failure to adequately respect and protect the cultural heritage embodied by the West Side Community Center. Despite legal obligations under historic preservation statutes, Meridian had repeatedly ignored or circumvented requirements designed to safeguard properties of cultural and historical significance. The company's use of multiple shell corporations and strategic filings, under less stringent zoning provisions, allowed it to sidestep comprehensive reviews and community impact assessments that might have halted or modified their development plans. Olivia's evidence suggested that Meridian's disregard for these protections was not accidental, but part of a broader pattern that prioritized profit over people, especially those in marginalized communities. This revelation struck a chord within the courtroom. Jurors and observers began to grasp that the case was not merely a dispute over zoning codes or economic development. It was a battle against entrenched racial inequities perpetuated through legal and financial maneuvers. Evelyn Carter's decades of legal experience lent weight to these arguments, underscoring how such discriminatory patterns often operated under the radar, shielded by complex corporate structures and technical legalities. Olivia's passionate presentation brought a human face to the statistics, reminding all present of the families, entrepreneurs, and cultural institutions at risk of erasure. Meridian's legal team, caught off guard by the thoroughness of these allegations, scrambled to deflect and downplay the evidence. But the foundation had been laid. The company's development practices could no longer be seen as neutral or purely business-driven. Instead, they revealed systemic bias that violated not only community trust, but also the spirit of laws designed to promote equity and preserve cultural heritage. Olivia's compelling case galvanized public support and shifted the momentum firmly in favor of the plaintiffs, setting the stage for deeper scrutiny of Meridian's motives and methods. As the trial moved forward, Evelyn Carter rose with measured calm, her cane tapping softly against the courtroom floor, signaling a shift in momentum. The weight of decades spent in the highest echelons of the legal system was evident in her every step and gesture. Turning toward Meridian Development's economic and planning witnesses, She began a meticulous cross-examination that would unravel the foundation of their case. With keen insight, Evelyn questioned the validity of the data and the reliability of the methodologies employed by Meridian's experts. She highlighted glaring technical errors, pointing out how key reports were based on outdated or information that failed to reflect recent changes or improvements made to the West Side Community Center. These omissions skewed the analysis, painting an inaccurately bleak picture of the property's condition and value. Evelyn probed deeper into the economic impact assessments, dissecting the statistical models used to justify the development's promised benefits. She demonstrated that the economic multipliers applied were designed for suburban expansion projects, not for the dense, urban, renewal context of the community center. By misapplying these models, Meridian's experts had inflated projected job creation and tax revenues, presenting a misleading case to the court. Her calm but pointed questions revealed inconsistencies and assumptions that had gone unchallenged until now. The witnesses, once confident and authoritative, found themselves faltering under her precise scrutiny. Turning to zoning regulations and historic preservation codes, Evelyn introduced supplementary legal documents and precedent cases that Meridian's counsel had overlooked or misunderstood. She presented excerpts from court opinions and legislative texts that clarified how cultural significance and ongoing community use could override certain technical deficiencies in building codes, particularly when renovation plans were underway or feasible. By grounding her arguments in well-established legal principles, Evelyn exposed the overreach of Meridian's position and its failure to honor the protections intended by the law. Her courtroom presence was a masterclass in legal strategy, patient, authoritative, and unyielding. Every document she produced, every citation she read aloud, chipped away at the narrative Meridian had constructed. Jurors leaned forward, absorbing the clarity she brought to what had initially seemed like an impenetrable wall of expert testimony. Evelyn's approach not only highlighted Meridian's technical and legal missteps, but also reinforced the legitimacy and vitality of the community center as a living institution worthy of preservation. Meanwhile, Olivia watched closely, inspired by her grandmother's deft handling of the case. Evelyn's methodical dismantling of the opposing evidence underscored the importance of thorough preparation and deep knowledge, a lesson Olivia embraced as she prepared for her own role in the trial. Together, their combined efforts began to shift the courtroom dynamic, demonstrating that truth and justice could prevail even against well-funded and aggressive opposition when pursued with intellect and integrity. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Evelyn Carter calmly rose from her seat, ready to shatter the preconceptions that had clouded the trial thus far. With measured confidence, she began to reveal a truth that none in the courtroom had anticipated. She was not just a plaintiff or a community advocate, but a former justice of the state Supreme Court and the very author of the landmark ruling in Patterson v. Greenfield that Marcus Caldwell had repeatedly cited to undermine their case. One by one, she presented official documents, photographs, and legal awards that chronicled her decades-long career, illuminating her role in shaping the state's jurisprudence on historic preservation and property rights. As Evelyn laid bare her credentials, the reaction was palpable. Caldwell, who had swaggered into the courtroom with an air of superiority, froze mid-sentence, his confident demeanor unraveling as the weight of his misjudgment became undeniable. The jurors exchanged surprised glances, and even Judge Harriet Morris leaned forward with renewed interest. The revelation was not simply about credentials. It was a profound rebuke of the biases Caldwell had displayed. His repeated underestimation of Evelyn, dismissing her as an elderly woman lacking legal acumen, now stood exposed as both unprofessional and prejudiced. Evelyn's voice remained steady as she addressed Caldwell directly, pointing out that his failure to research the true identity and expertise of opposing counsel had cost him credibility and decorum. "You chose to judge me by my age and appearance, not by my knowledge or experience," she said quietly but firmly. "That was your first mistake." The courtroom absorbed the significance of her words. This was a case not just about property lines or zoning laws, but about respect, equality, and confronting deeply ingrained assumptions. Caldwell's earlier dismissive gestures and cutting remarks now seemed hollow and misplaced. For the first time, he was forced to confront the reality that beneath Evelyn's modest exterior lay a legal titan whose influence extended far beyond the walls of this courtroom. The moment underscored a broader truth about prejudice and the dangers of underestimating others based on superficial judgments. Evelyn Carter's revelation reshaped the trial's dynamics, turning the tide and setting the stage for a reckoning that extended beyond the case at hand. As the trial wore on, the once unshakable confidence of Marcus Caldwell began to visibly crumble. The relentless, precise questioning from Evelyn Carter and her granddaughter, Naomi, exposed flaws and inconsistencies in Meridian Development's case that Caldwell had underestimated. Each expertly crafted argument from Evelyn chipped away at the foundations of his legal position, forcing him into a defensive stance that grew more desperate by the hour. When confronted with evidence that challenged his carefully rehearsed claims, Caldwell's usual composure gave way to frustration and irritation. His voice, once calm and authoritative, occasionally rose in sharpness as he struggled to regain control of the courtroom narrative. During a particularly intense cross-examination, Caldwell's impatience became evident. When pressed about technical inaccuracies in the economic reports presented by Meridian's experts, he snapped at the witnesses, and occasionally at opposing counsel, his tone shifting from professional to combative. The judge, Harriet Morris, who had maintained a patient and impartial demeanor throughout the proceedings, was forced to intervene. After Caldwell interrupted Evelyn mid-question and made a dismissive remark regarding her age and understanding, Judge Morris issued a stern reprimand. "Mr. Caldwell, this courtroom demands respect and decorum," she cautioned firmly. "Personal attacks and interruptions will not be tolerated." Caldwell's forced apology was delivered with a tone that lacked genuine remorse, further undermining his standing before the court. As the day progressed, Caldwell's increasingly erratic behavior did not go unnoticed. Jurors exchanged uneasy glances, and witnesses appeared unsettled by his aggressive approach. His legal team exchanged worried looks, recognizing that their lead counsel's professionalism was faltering at a critical juncture. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Naomi remained composed, their calm demeanor highlighting the stark contrast in courtroom conduct. Evelyn's methodical dismantling of Meridian's evidence continued unabated, while Naomi's impassioned yet precise questioning reinforced the growing perception that Meridian's case was deeply flawed. The mounting pressure and public admonishment seemed to take a toll on Caldwell's confidence. He became more hesitant in his objections and less forceful in redirecting witnesses. His earlier theatrical gestures gave way to a more subdued posture, revealing a man grappling with the reality that his strategy was unraveling. The judge's repeated reminders to maintain professionalism were not just procedural, they underscored the seriousness of Caldwell's misconduct and its potential impact on the fairness of the trial. This turning point in the courtroom marked a significant shift, not only in the legal battle but in the personal transformation that would soon follow. Caldwell's loss of composure foreshadowed his eventual reckoning with the biases and assumptions that had guided his approach to the case. For now, though, the courtroom watched as a once dominant figure was humbled by the relentless pursuit of truth and justice embodied by Evelyn Carter and Naomi. Their steadfast resolve ensured that the focus remained squarely on the merits of the case, paving the way for a fair and thorough examination of Meridian's actions. After days of intense legal battles and mounting public pressure, Meridian Development finally agreed to a comprehensive settlement that marked a significant victory for Evelyn Carter, Naomi Carter, and the Westside community. Recognizing the strength of the evidence against them and the growing scrutiny from both the courtroom and the wider public, Meridian's leadership decided to withdraw their application to redevelop the site of the historic Westside Community Center. This concession alone was a major step toward preserving the cultural heart of the neighborhood, but Meridian's commitments went far beyond mere withdrawal. As part of the settlement, Meridian agreed to provide substantial financial support for the quartering, renovation, and restoration of the community center. A donation of $500,000 was earmarked specifically for preserving the building's historic architectural features while integrating modern amenities to ensure the space remained functional and accessible for years to come. This investment underscored a new willingness by Meridian to acknowledge and honor the center's vital role within the local Black community, a role they had previously attempted to minimize or dismiss. Further reforms mandated by the agreement required Meridian to commission an independent audit of their real estate acquisition and development practices. This audit aimed to uncover any other instances of discriminatory behavior or procedural irregularities, ensuring transparency and accountability going forward. Meridian also committed to establishing a community advisory board composed of neighborhood residents, business owners, and cultural leaders with real authority to review and influence future development proposals. This board represented a meaningful step toward inclusive urban planning, providing a platform for voices that had long been marginalized in decisions affecting their own communities. Perhaps most importantly, Meridian pledged to support workforce development and diversity initiatives. They agreed to fund apprenticeship and training programs targeted at minority, contractors, and skilled tradespeople from the area. This commitment aimed to foster economic empowerment within the community by creating pathways to employment and entrepreneurship that had historically been limited or inaccessible. By investing in local talent and prioritizing minority inclusion in their projects, Meridian signaled a shift toward socially responsible development practices. For Evelyn and Naomi, these reforms were not just legal victories, but foundational changes that addressed the root causes of inequity and exclusion. The settlement set a precedent for how developers could balance economic growth with cultural preservation and social justice. It also reinforced the importance of community advocacy and the power of the legal system to challenge entrenched power dynamics. As the courtroom emptied and the news spread, the West Side Community Center's preservation became a symbol of resilience, a testament to the impact of courage, strategy, and collective action. Meridian's leadership, though initially resistant, publicly acknowledged the need for transformation. Their new chief community officer emphasized the lessons learned. Our previous approach prioritized efficiency over inclusion, and we now recognize that true success requires partnership and respect for the communities we serve. This sentiment offered hope that development, when done thoughtfully and equitably, could become a force for healing and opportunity rather than displacement and division. Following the conclusion of the high-profile trial, Bradley Thompson faced severe professional consequences for his conduct throughout the proceedings. The State Bar Association launched a formal ethics investigation after complaints were filed by Evelyn Carter and her legal team. The charges against Bradley included conduct unbecoming an officer of the court, deliberate misrepresentation of legal precedents, and blatant bias directed at a party based on age and race. These were serious allegations that called into question his integrity and fitness to practice law. After a thorough hearing before the Disciplinary Integrity Committee, Bradley was suspended from practicing law for 6 months. Additionally, he was mandated to complete extensive ethics training and to perform 400 hours of community service at the very Westside Community Center he had once sought to see demolished. The community service requirement proved to be a turning point in Bradley's personal and professional life. Initially resentful and dismissive, he approached the mandate as a mere formality. However, as he spent time working alongside residents, community leaders, and the center staff, his perspective began to shift. Exposure to the real-life stories of those affected by legal and social inequities opened his eyes to the human impact of the systemic biases he had previously ignored. Bradley found himself humbled by the resilience and dignity of the community he had once underestimated. Gradually, his attitude softened, replaced by a genuine desire to make amends and to use his legal skills to help rather than harm. Throughout this period of reflection and growth, Bradley sought guidance from Evelyn Carter herself. Recognizing the depth of his transformation and the sincerity of his remorse, Evelyn agreed to mentor him. Their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect and learning. Evelyn providing wisdom and perspective grounded in decades of experience, and Bradley bringing renewed energy and commitment to ethical advocacy. Under her mentorship, he rededicated himself to serving marginalized communities, focusing his legal practice on civil rights, housing justice, and historic preservation. Bradley's journey from arrogance to humility became a compelling example of redemption within the legal profession. At bar association panels and community forums, he openly acknowledged his past mistakes, emphasizing the importance of confronting personal biases and committing to continuous self-improvement. His story resonated widely, inspiring fellow attorneys to examine their own conduct and the subtle ways in which prejudice can undermine justice. Meanwhile, Evelyn and Naomi continued their tireless work to protect vulnerable BTIs communities, their victory now amplified by Bradley's unexpected transformation. The West Side Community Center, once threatened by development, had not only been preserved but had also become a beacon of hope and reconciliation. Bradley's participation in its revitalization efforts symbolized the possibility of change, not only in policy but in hearts and minds. His evolution demonstrated that accountability, education, and genuine connection could heal divisions and foster a more just legal system. What began as a bitter courtroom confrontation ultimately culminated in a powerful testament to growth, forgiveness, and the enduring pursuit of justice. The ripple effects of the West Side Community Center case extended far beyond the walls of the courtroom, sparking lasting change across the legal profession, urban development, practices, and community advocacy. Recognizing the profound lessons embedded in the trial, state legal education authorities incorporated the case into the mandatory ethics curriculum for law schools and continuing education programs. The story of Evelyn Carter and her granddaughter Naomi's relentless pursuit of justice became a foundational teaching tool to illuminate the often subtle yet damaging effects of implicit bias and systemic discrimination within the legal community. Law students and practicing attorneys alike grappled with the uncomfortable realities that even well-intentioned professionals could harbor prejudices that influenced their conduct, and that such biases threatened the fairness and integrity of the justice system. The case prompted a broad reevaluation of professional ethics, standards, and courtroom behavior. Bar associations across the state launched initiatives aimed at identifying and addressing unconscious biases, with Evelyn Carter invited as an honorary chairperson to lead the inaugural committee dedicated to these issues. Under her guidance, workshops, seminars, and awareness campaigns proliferated, fostering a culture of accountability and inclusion among legal practitioners. The case underscored that true justice required not only technical, legal knowledge but also cultural competence, empathy, and an unwavering commitment to treat every individual with dignity, regardless of age, race, or background. These reforms began to transform courtrooms and law firms, making them more reflective of the communities they served. Meanwhile, Meridian Development faced its own imperative to change. Following the settlement and the public scrutiny that accompanied the trial, the corporation undertook a comprehensive overhaul of its development model. The company's leadership publicly acknowledged that their previous approach, which prioritized speed and economic efficiency over meaningful community engagement, had been flawed and exclusionary. In response, Meridian instituted a series of reforms aimed at promoting transparency, inclusivity, and cultural sensitivity. The establishment of a genuinely empowered community advisory board gave local residents a decisive voice in shaping future projects, ensuring that development efforts respected historic preservation and addressed the needs of marginalized communities. Meridian also committed to funding apprenticeship and minority contractor programs, investing in the economic empowerment of the very neighborhoods they once sought to displace. The preservation and revitalization of the West Side Community Center itself became a symbol of this new era. The restored building not only maintained its architectural heritage but also expanded its role as a hub for education, legal assistance, and cultural programming. Evelyn and Naomi continued their tireless advocacy work, leveraging their heightened public profiles to champion reforms in urban planning, housing justice, and civil rights law. Their efforts extended into community education initiatives, where they worked alongside local leaders and activists to empower residents with knowledge about their legal rights and tools to safeguard their neighborhoods from predatory development. The trial's long-term impact also inspired a generation of young lawyers, especially women and people of color, who saw in Evelyn and Naomi's partnership a powerful example of intergenerational mentorship and resilience. Law schools began emphasizing the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in both their curricula and admissions policies. Evelyn's message that legal expertise alone was insufficient without a deep understanding of the USD communities served resonated deeply, fostering a new generation of advocates committed to holistic justice. In sum, the West Side Community Center case transcended its immediate legal dispute to become a catalyst for systemic transformation. It challenged entrenched power structures, exposed pervasive inequities, and sparked reforms that reverberated through legal institutions and urban development practices alike. Most importantly, it reaffirmed the essential truth that justice is not a static ideal but a living process, one that requires courage, vigilance, and compassion to realize. Evelyn Carter and Naomi's unwavering commitment ensured that this legacy would endure, inspiring countless others to continue the fight for fairness, dignity, and community empowerment for years to come. The story of Evelyn Carter and Naomi's fight to save the West Side Community Center is a powerful reminder of how dangerous it can be to judge others based on age, race, or any superficial bias. Underestimating someone because of their appearance or background is not only unfair but blinds us to the true strength and wisdom they possess. Evelyn, despite being an elderly black woman, carried decades of legal knowledge and experience that proved unstoppable against the presumptions and prejudices of her opponent. Her success was not a stroke of luck, but the result of relentless preparation, sharp intellect, and unwavering determination. This teaches us that knowledge and readiness are formidable tools in challenging injustice and breaking through societal barriers. The journey also underscores that meaningful change in society and the legal system is rarely quick or easy. It demands patience, strategic thinking, and persistence qualities Evelyn embodied throughout the trial. Rather than reacting with anger or bitterness to the disrespect and discrimination she faced, she chose to respond with dignity, calm, and unshakable resolve. Her example shows us that transformation is possible when we combine courage with thoughtful action and when we refuse to be defined or limited by others' narrow expectations. Moreover, the story reveals that forgiveness, awareness, and education are essential pathways to justice and progress. It is not enough to confront wrongs. We must also cultivate understanding and teach others to see beyond prejudice. Evelyn's decision to mentor her former adversary after the trial exemplifies the power of second chances and the importance of guiding others toward empathy and ethical behavior. Through education and openness, we can build bridges, heal divisions, and create a more equitable society. Never judge someone by their age, race, or background, because true strength lies in experience, wisdom, and character. Preparation and patience are your allies in overcoming obstacles and bias. And above all, embrace forgiveness and education, not only to transform others but to uplift yourself. When we open our hearts and minds, we pave the way for real change that benefits everyone. If this story inspired you or touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear your experiences and reflections on overcoming prejudice and injustice. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of courage, dignity, and justice. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Together, we can keep these stories alive and fuel the movement toward a fairer world.